Hey everybody, today I'm going to show you how to change the oil on your Generac standby generator. This is a procedure that you normally want to do after the generator has run for a collective of 200 hours or if it's been 2 years, whichever comes first. This generator is a little past due. We're just coming up on 3 years. It'll be 3 years later this month. But that's not too bad, and the oil looks good, so this is really not all the hard job to do. Just, some things you should know about what to do when you process something like this. So let's go ahead and show you what you should do for this kind of procedure. And first things first, let's go ahead and show you the kind of tools and materials that you'll probably need. So over here we have a drain pan, we have our quarts of oil. This particular generator takes a 5W30 full synthetic, and if you want to get the Generac oil, you certainly can. I have CarQuest in this brand, but that's okay. But as long as you have 5W30 and full synthetic, you're good there. Here's your oil filter, if you want to see the part number right there. A funnel for adding the oil. Some channel locks to possibly get the old oil filter off. We'll see how that goes. You can also use an oil filter removal tool, of course, if you have that on hand. Some rags and a piece of cardboard, and I'll show you how the cardboard comes into play later on. One other procedure I would like to mention, or notice I should mention, is that whenever you're working with oil, it is a good idea to have gloves on your hands. Now, I unfortunately don't have any gloves. If I did, I'd put them on, but the reason why I don't have any gloves is because there's none in the house. I thought I had some, but I don't. So in case any of you are wondering why I'm not wearing any, that's why. That being said, if you're kind of in the same situation that I am, just have the rags to get the oil off your hands as much as you can if it gets on them. And also, once you're all done with this, it's not a bad idea to go inside your house, give your hands a good washing with some dish soap when you're all done, just to get all that oil off. Okay, so first things first, it's actually not a bad idea to run the engine for about maybe 2 to 5 minutes just to warm it up, so that way when you try to drain the old oil, it comes out a little bit faster and easier. Now, that being said, of course, common sense, when the engine is hot, the oil is hot. So once you turn it off, give it a couple minutes to let all the oil set back down to the bottom, but also be aware that, of course, the oil will be hot. So it may not be a bad idea to let the engine sit for a few more minutes just to give it a little bit more cool down time, okay? If you want to try with the engine oil hot, you certainly can, but just so you know, you do so at your own risk. So let's go ahead and get this running for a couple minutes, then we'll begin the official procedure. Okay, so I just ran the engine for about 3 minutes. Now I'm just letting it sit for all the oil to settle back down and for it to get some cool down time as well. So from this point on, you want to make sure that this does not in any way turn on while you're doing this procedure, needless to say. So to be sure of that, 2 things you can do. Every model will be different, but you want to set your generator to off, as you can see. And we're not really going to be touching anything regarding wiring in this thing, but it's not a bad idea to go ahead and hit this main breaker as well. Okay, so now we have this set to off, this turned off, and it should be all set to go. And now to start, you want to take off your front panel, which will give you access to many more of the parts. To take off this front panel, you just want to lift straight up. Don't try to tilt it forward, just lift straight up. It may take a little bit of pulling. That wasn't too bad. Okay, comes off just like that. And now you can see you have much more access to what you need to do inside. So we'll go ahead and we'll just put this over here for the time being. All right. Okay, that works. And now what you want to look for right here, okay, here's your oil filter, here's an oil cooler, in case you were curious, and right here is your oil drain, okay? So what you want to do is, every setup's going to be different depending on how high or low your generator is. So you're going to want to try to get this hose as low as you can in order to get the oil to drain into the drain pan properly. So I'm going to put mine over here, as you can see, okay? And then you want to just be careful. You want to unclip the hose from this thing right here. And then once you have it unclipped from the side here, you just drag the hose down and put it to your drain pan and let the oil drain out. It's not a bad idea to also get like a kind of heavy object that you can maybe hold the hose down here so it can all go into your drain pan. And another good piece of advice is you could also remove your dipstick and also your fill cap, because if you do that, that will allow some air to go in, so in order for the oil to come out maybe a little bit smoother. So that may be a bad idea. So get some heavy to hold the hose down if you can, and take off this and the dipstick, and that should allow the oil to come out nice and easily. And as you can see here, I've got the filler cap off, the dipstick out, got the hose down, and as you can see, the oil is coming out. And as you can see, yep, this oil is pretty dark, so it's definitely good that we're changing it now. So once again, about every 200 hours of runtime, or every 2 years, you want to consider changing your oil. So we're just going to go ahead and let this fully drain out, and then we will go on to the next step. Just as a side note, guys, this might actually be a useful piece of advice. As you can see here, I've cut open a side of an old oil container, and as you can see, I actually have the hose holding it down by this rock here. I have it going into this oil container here, which is actually a pretty smart idea, because that way you can get it to fill a certain point, and then you can just pour it over into your drain pan if you have problems with the elevation of it, like I do. Just word of note, make sure you absolutely don't just let this go, because if this overfills, you're going to spill oil over the place, get in the dirt. Not good. So what you do is watch it carefully. Then when it comes time to maybe pour this into the drain pan, just take the cap right there, plug the drain line back up, pour it into the drain pan, and then just do it again. So there's a useful piece of advice if you can't quite get this hose to its lowest point with that regular drain pan. And once it looks like it's just about all finished, just remove whatever you have that's holding the hose down and hold it down manually with your hand and take a look at what you got. Now, as you can see here, we just got just about a slow drip left, so I'd say we're pretty good with getting most of the old engine oil out. So let's go ahead and we'll put the cap back on the hose. Pour this into the drain pan, and then we will proceed with the step for the oil filter. Okay, so I've also put the drain hose back up to where it should be, and I've also temporarily replaced the filler cap and the dipstick for now. Now, when you get the oil filter out, even though you've drained most of the oil, there's still going to be some oil left in here. So you're going to have a little bit of a mess here when you take this off. There's many ways you can go about to try to contain the oil. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to use this piece of cardboard to help absorb it when I take it off. And if any manages to flow off, I got my oil container here, and it could just flow into there as well, so you're keeping it out of the ground and everything like that. Now, the oil filter tightness can vary. You can try at first taking it off with your bare hands. If that doesn't work, then what you can do is you can either use an oil filter removal tool, or again, if you don't have it on you, like I don't currently, you can use a set of channel locks. Now, only use the channel locks to take off the old oil filter, because if you happen to damage this, no problem. You're getting rid of it anyway, so it doesn't matter. But on the new oil filter, don't use these, okay? Just use your hands to get the new one on. So let me go ahead and I'll need two hands to do this. Let me go ahead and take this off and see how we do in regards to the oil that's going to come out of here. Alright, that wasn't too bad. So when I unscrewed it, most of the oil, as you can see, went into the cardboard, and it did contain most of it, but I was able to move it over safely to the drain pan, put it all in, draining the old filter, and what I did in the meantime was I just put the oil container under there just to catch any loose drips. So that worked out pretty well. So that could be a useful tip, like maybe use some cardboard to help contain the oil. Then once it kind of slows down, put the cardboard into the drain pan, put an old container underneath, and that should catch any more loose strips. One thing to notice is, as you can see with the old filter, the gasket came off with the filter, and that's exactly what you want to happen. Have happen rather. If by chance the gasket stays on there, you want to take it off. Don't leave the old gasket on there, because then, kind of like with a car, if you double gasket, you'll double gasket the new filter, and you don't want to do that. You just want one gasket on there. Okay, so if the gasket stays on there, just take it off, and you should be all set. And of course, it's a good idea to check parts to compare the new and the old, just to be sure that they look pretty much identical. Aside from a few let me say it again. Aside from a few differences in text, they look pretty much like the same size, the same height, so we are good to go. And here's a pretty helpful tip. You want the engine to have oil as soon as it can, so even though this oil filter kind of goes in sideways, it's a good idea to pre-fill this oil filter with your fresh new oil. So I got one of the containers right here. Let's go ahead and take it off. And actually, even though this filter goes in kind of sideways, one of the things that does happen is that, or can happen, is that when you fill up the new filter, it tends to absorb some of the oil, so it may make the level go down a little bit. In this case, that's fine, because since the filter goes in kind of sideways, that's not a bad idea for that to happen. So we'll go ahead and we'll use our cardboard here to contain any possible messes. There we go. So you want to just go ahead and fill it up to the top. Just like that. I've bubbled down a little bit, so it's probably absorbing it right now. I'll just do that. Okay, that should be good enough. You can see it's going back down in there. And another good useful thing to do is you want to get some of this new oil here, okay? And you want to put it all along this new gasket here. You do not want to put this filter on with the gasket dry, because it could possibly bind, stick, maybe get damaged, and then you're going to have an oil leak, which is definitely not good. So after you've filled up your oil filter, go ahead and put some fresh new oil all on the gasket. And one last good thing to do here is maybe just give the mating surface for the gasket just a good wipe down, just to be sure there's no debris. It's a nice clean piece of metal. That way it goes on there completely flat, good seal, won't have any oil leaks. And as you can see, I've put the cardboard back underneath now to catch any possible spills that may happen as I put the new filter in. So here's the new filter, all nice and filled up. So now what we're going to go is we're going to go ahead and get this cardboard to stay here. There we go. Going to go ahead and angle it in. May have put a little too much oil in, but again, the cardboard will catch the spills. Just go ahead and try to screw it on. Make sure it doesn't cross thread. Oh, beautiful. And then once the gasket makes contact with the metal, give it a good 3/4 to a full turn to be sure that you're not going to have any leaks and that the oil filter won't possibly come loose over time from vibrations with the engine. Okay, new oil filter is fully installed. We are now ready to add the oil. So how much oil do you put in? Well, for the most part, these generators take about 1.9 quarts of oil. However, the best thing to do is to check your owner's manual, because that will give you the exact amount of oil that you will need to add in order to be sure that you don't put in too little and you don't put in too much. Now, depending on your kind of funnel, you may have to remove this bar here, but if you have a 10mm socket, these nuts come right off. You can take the bar right off. My funnel just makes it on there, okay? So I'm going to keep this bar on. But if you need to take this bar off, again, just take off these two 10mm nuts, and you should be all good. So I'm going to go ahead and take off the cap, get the funnel. Again, as you can see, mine is just okay. But again, if you're not comfortable with that, take the bar off. And basically what you can do is you can probably put in the full first quart just fine without checking, but you know, if you're not sure, of course what you do is take out your dipstick, wipe it off, put it back in, and see how the level is. When your oil level comes up to that second circle, in this case on the left, when it gets right up to that circle, you're good. So put in new oil until you're right up to that circle on the left, and then you should be good for the next step. Okay, so it's probably going to be pretty hard to see in the video, but I just checked my oil dipstick, and as far as I can tell, you're probably not going to be able to see it. The oil is right up to that left circle. So I think we're all set as to where we should be for now. Now, one thing you want to do is you want to run the engine and get all the oil moved and then check the level again. But before you do that, there is one thing I do want to recommend. I would run the engine for at least 15 minutes. Now, the reason why I recommend that is because one of the byproducts of burning fuel like this is water vapor. And immediately nothing bad will happen, but over time, if the engine doesn't get hot enough, there could be water vapor eventually getting with the oil. And as we know, water with oil, not a good combination for an engine. So what you want to do is, after you're all set here, make sure, cap up your containers, of course, remove the funnel, put the cap back on, and then again, run the engine for a good 15 minutes. That way, the engine gets really nice and hot, and any possible water vapor in there should be evaporated off. And in this case, what I'm going to do is, since we're all done down here, I'm going to put the front panel back on. So to put it back on, you can see there's a hole there and a hole there, okay? And there's two little slots right here. So now you want these pegs, maybe you can see them on the bottom of the panel, to go into those holes like so. One there, okay? And then you want these two tabs right here to go into those slots. It's going to be a little bit of a tight fit, but you should be able to get it to go in there. Very good. All right. So now make sure you got your cap back on, dipstick back in. Let's go ahead and just give the engine a start and see how it sounds. That sounds fantastic. All right. So we're going to go ahead and let this run for 15 minutes. And then we'll turn it off. Just one thing I left out, guys. Sorry about that. While the engine is running, if you want, leave the top open and just carefully look around along the bottom, especially where the oil filter is, and check for any oil leaks while this is running. I just checked. The bottom is totally dry, so we're good to go. So we're going to go ahead and let this run for the 15 minutes. Okay, so it's been just about 15 minutes now. So let's go ahead and turn it back to off to turn it off. Whew, there we go. And yeah, I'm sure you saw the text in the video, but yeah, before you turn it on, you can also turn the breaker back on. Sorry, I forgot to mention that in the video. So now what we're going to do is you can wait a couple of minutes for the oil to all settle back down and then check the level again. Now again, if you're going to check it a couple of minutes after, remember, if the engine is hot, the oil is hot. So be very careful if you check the level when it's hot. Or if you want, wait a little bit more time for it to cool down and then check the level. We'll just go ahead and have one more look here by the oil filter. And as you can see, maybe you can see, there is not a drop on the bottom, so no leaks. We did good. Okay, so I gave it about another 15 minutes of cool down time, so we should be okay to check it. It is still going to be warm, but won't be as hot as it was before. So let's go ahead. So what we'll do is we'll take the stick out, okay, wipe it off best we can, doing it one-handed. So let's go ahead and reinsert it and see what we got. Sorry, hang on. There we go. Gonna be hard to see in the video probably, but it looks like it's about maybe, oh, I'd say sort of halfway up the cross-hatched area, if you can see that. So that's an okay level, but just for peace of mind and just for the sake of wanting to feel like I fully did the job right, sorry for the sun glare there, I'm going to go ahead and top it up. So the way you would do that is just like the way you edited it before. Go ahead and take off your front panel, put the funnel back in, and then add it a little at a time and check the stick. And then when it's up to that circle, you are all set. And after adding a little bit, let's see how we are. Now, just for the sake of brevity, I've wiped off the stick already. So we'll go ahead and put it back in, take it out. Let's see. It's really hard to see in the video, but I can tell it's pretty much touching that left circle now. So that level is perfect. I definitely don't add any more if it's touching that circle. We are good to go. So once your oil level is all set, make sure you have your cap back on and your dipstick in. And then make sure your breaker is on. Put this back to auto. And you are good to go. And close up the top. Now, in terms of what to do with the old oil, many auto parts stores will take your old oil to dispose of it, so you can pour it back into old containers like I have right there, and give it to them, and they'll take care of it for you. Well, everybody, there you go. That is how you change the oil on your Generac standby generator. This is really not all of a hard job to do. Just with some good, careful use and good tools, you can get it done no problem. Hopefully this video was useful to you, and if it was, hope it helps your service go as well as it did for me. Thank you very much for watching, and take care.